Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello and welcome to the Success in Africa Leadership Podcast. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership and organizational development. Simply put, I study what makes people successful. I have been studying this for 3 decades with a particular focus on people in Africa. And in this podcast, I share stories, lessons, and insights about people having success in Africa. I created this podcast because I have a vision for Africa. My vision is that Africa will become a high-income continent by the year 2040. And for that to happen, I need you and every other African watching or listening to this podcast to become successful. So if you want to be successful in Africa, I encourage you, like and subscribe to this podcast. You're going to get lots and lots of information and tips from people who have walked the journey so that you can also learn from their experience. This episode is brought to you courtesy of BCA Online, the one-stop shop for mastering leadership. Joining BCA Online is free, and it gives you access to countless hours of knowledge, videos, and a plethora of resources on leadership that will enhance your capacity. If you have questions that you want me to answer after watching this video, just log on to BCA Online. The link is on the screen. And post your questions there. That is where I will respond to your questions. Today, I am continuing, in fact, concluding on a 5-part series that I started 4 weeks ago on culture. Culture is the sum total of behaviors that are rewarded plus behaviors that are tolerated, minus behaviors that are punished. Every community, every organization, every company, every tribe, every country, every home has culture. So you understand it, that it is the sum total of behaviors that are rewarded, plus what is tolerated minus what is punished. You've seen it. Whether you grew up in a family or you are part of a community, you've known those things that are accepted and those things that are like, don't do it here. That's culture. Across the continent, very capable people, young and old, are engaging in cultural behaviors that are conspiring to make us poor. Right here in Africa. I've been looking into these and I've identified 5 cultural behaviors that make us poor. And in the last 4 weeks, I described 4 of them. And today I'll describe the 5th one. But before I go there, let me just repeat something I've said before. Each of these 5 has good elements. In fact, many of us cherish them. We consider them an integral part of who we are. It's what makes us Africans. I share these observations with no intention to cast any blame. See, all I'm doing is recognizing and helping you to recognize that while such behaviors may be entertaining or we may be emotionally tied to them, we must also recognize how they contribute to our wealth or our poverty, and as a result, our life expectancy. If we don't recognize them, and we don't seek to modify or change them, then we're going to continue to get the outcomes we've always gotten, which is that Africa will be a continent filled with people with an average life expectancy that is 10 to 15 years less than the life expectancy for people in other continents. Is that what we really want? Is that a price worth paying? so that we can say, ooh, this is something that makes us Africans? That's a choice for you. But if you want to be successful in Africa, then you have to discipline yourself to look at what are the things that keep people from being successful and can keep you from being successful, and change them. So let me just review the 4 that we've done. I'm not going to go into the details of them. You can watch the previous episodes. But the first one we discussed was our reverence for seniority. Reverence for seniority. The second of the 5 we discussed was weddings and funerals. Weddings and funerals. The third one was marginalization of women. Marginalization of women. Yes, each of these makes us poorer. The fourth one was disrespect for time. Disrespect for time. Today we will examine the 5th one, which is relationships trump rules. Relationships trump rules. Let me tell you a story. A multinational company operating in Africa made an interesting discovery over time. When the company placed the national of a country in charge of its operations within the same country, overall performance was consistently suboptimal. It was poor. Discipline weakened. Quality declined. However, when that same manager was transferred to oversee operations in another African country, guess what? Performance improved dramatically. Productivity increased. Discipline was enforced. Standards rose. Meanwhile, in the original country, when the manager was replaced by another African national from another country, performance also improved. What was going on? It appeared that the same African manager was far less effective when supervising his or his fellow countrymen than when he was operating outside his home country. It almost boggled the mind of these folks. Like, in a place that he was less familiar, he was more effective. In a place where he was more familiar, where you would think, well, he knows the people, he knows the markets, he was less effective. As the multinational company examined this pattern more closely, one reason became very clear. These managers struggled to enforce discipline and follow rules when dealing with people with whom they had personal relationships. In other words, colleagues they had grown up with, extended family members, or individuals connected through social and communal networks. See, what the multinational company uncovered was not a management flaw. It was a cultural flaw. In Africa, here in Africa, relationships are gold. Loyalty is admired. Getting along with others is prized. These aren't bad values. However, when relationships are prioritized above discipline, competence, character, and rules, then they become destructive. This prioritization is what allows us to hire family members and friends who are unqualified for the roles that they occupy. It is what enables the promotion of individuals not because of merit, but because of blood ties or social connections. Nepotism thrives where relationships trump rules. It is what makes managers look the other way when an employee is late, incompetent, or worse yet, mismanages funds because that employee is connected to a friend, an uncle, or a benefactor. It is what prevents colleagues from holding one another accountable because they share personal histories or social obligations. They are the godfather to their friend. to their colleague's child or the godmother. Over time, organizations suffer. Profitability declines. Standards erode. This same dynamic keeps substandard doctors, nurses, and teachers in positions where they harm patients and children. Why? Because holding them accountable might damage a relationship. In family-owned businesses, the consequences are even more severe. Ownership is conflated with management. Businesses are handed to sons, daughters, or grandchildren, regardless of their competence or even their interest. As a result, over 90% of family-owned businesses in Africa do not survive beyond 2 generations. This is not an argument against family or relationships. We are human beings. We're not machines. Relationships matter. I get it. But when the preservation of relationships becomes more important than the adherence to rules that protect the collective, we destroy long-term value for short-term comfort. This cultural tendency also undermines regional cooperation. I'm sure most of you watching or listening to this episode have heard of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, or AfTA. It's an amazing agreement. On paper, it makes sense. Put together all African countries, we create one of the largest trading blocs. Remove the barriers to movement of goods and people. Create more economic opportunity for us by being one single trading bloc. Makes sense. Brilliant. On paper. Unfortunately, in practice, the implementation has been weak. Despite the fact that we've signed all these agreements, in reality, AfTA has not been implemented. Why? Because rules may exist, but relationships are overriding them. Bottlenecks persist at borders. Indiscipline is tolerated. Accountability is avoided. The result is inefficiency, higher cost, and lost opportunity. Folks, it would be easy to misunderstand this argument and claim that, relationships are the foundation of happiness. Indeed, there is research to show that strong relationships correlate with well-being. I'm not advocating for the destruction of relationships. I'm not advising that, we should not have relationships. I'm simply helping us to be more aware that when relationships take precedence over rules, then we are sentencing ourselves to a life of poverty. We become less dependable. We will end up producing inferior goods at higher cost. We lose our competitiveness in a world where competition definitely occurs. We become vulnerable to those who don't operate this same way. In a global economy where goods and services move very easily across borders, societies cannot match competence to responsibility. They will always end up importing more than they export. If your society simply does not match this competence issue to responsibility, then you will always be begging for aid and remain exposed to exploitation. After years of decline, culminating in the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, the country deliberately re-engineered its culture. It reduced the reverence for seniority, curtailed excessive spending on ceremonies, enforced respect for time, it elevated women and gave them equal opportunity to men, and it ensured that rules prevailed over relationships. Rwanda is one of the few countries where a minister does not dare to overspeed or break traffic rules just because he or she is a minister of the government. Because he or she knows that not only will they be sanctioned, prosecuted, but he might even potentially lose his job. Because the rules are the rules. You see, this process wasn't easy, this change in Rwanda. Prior to 1994, every one of these 5 cultural habits was very, very prevalent. Today, they are becoming rare. There is a direct correlation to letting go of these 5 cultural behaviors that keep us poor and becoming wealthy. A child born in Rwanda today enjoys far better prospects than one that was born in 1990 or 1986. The country did not stop being African. President Kagame did not stop being African. He simply led the country to letting go of the cultural norms that were killing it. My fellow African, if you want to be successful in Africa, prioritize rules and discipline over relationships. Warning, you may be accused by some people of even being un-African, but I assure you that you will be more successful. You will be more wealthy. And those same people who accuse you will someday come to ask you for money or for a job. Infuse this behavior into your organization and your company, and you will be successful in Africa. Don't take my word for it. Just watch what President Paul Kagame did. That's how he transformed an entire country. We have now come to the end of today's episode. I do hope you've learned quite a bit more about becoming successful in Africa. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Next week, I'm going to upload, I've just realized I need to do one concluding episode of this series. And it's going to focus really on how to change culture in an organization. Because having shared with you the 5 areas of culture that conspire to make us poor and shorten our lifespan, there's now a question or a need to share with you, okay, how do I make that change? If I'm running an organization or I'm influential in an organization, what do I do? How do I get a whole system of people to behave differently? We're going to explore that next week. Join me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it, because together we can transform Africa. I'll see you next week.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.